Okay, we are live. Welcome to Cinema Savvy, and we are doing something slightly different again with this one. We are going back into the realm of Netflix and going to give it our review on Stranger Things Season 2. I'm Chris Garner, joined today with Tom Woods. Unfortunately, Tate couldn't be involved in this one. He really wanted to talk about this one, but unfortunately, we didn't get the series all finished before he went to Austria, so he's over there right now. But we'll be taking up the mantle with this one and doing our utmost best to get a review out for this one. I have taken 4 blasts of the Farrah Fawcett spray. This is actually Pantene. Cinema Savvy is in no way endorsed by Pantene or any of its products. And we are ready to talk some 80s and Stranger Things. How are you doing tonight, Tom?
Not too bad, actually. Got a lot to say.
Yes, me too.
An awful lot.
I was actually surprised at how long it took me to get this series watched, because series 1 I got through pretty much in like 2 days, I think. This one, I was busy the weekend it went out. It went out Halloween weekend, and then I kind of had to rush through it the next week. But yeah, so the first part of this review will be spoiler-free, so you don't have to worry about us giving anything away. And let's be honest, anyone who is a Stranger Things fan has probably watched the season as it is now at this point. But we'll let you know when we do get to spoilers. So before we go into Season 2, we'll give our overview on Season 1. We do actually have a review on Series 1. I'll leave a link to that in the description down below after this stream's finished. Tom, what did you think to Stranger Things Season 1? Was it last year or 2 years ago?
Yeah, something like 2 years, last year or 2 years ago. I think it was 2016.
Yeah.
I think it was got released, I think.
I will check. Yeah, it was 2016.
Yeah. But it was really good. I really enjoyed it. I mean, it had everything. See, I'm not a big prevailer of the 80s, but after watching it, I was on a massive 80s buzz, and it just gave me the feeling of, you know, it's just a time capsule of the period, like condensed into 9 episodes of about monsters, E.T. You know, it's got all these different references. It's quite a good show as well. You've got characters in there that are really memorable, and it's really funny, and also the references help the plot. So, for example, you've got 11 is always referenced as E.T. in the first season. That's how she's discovered sort of an E.T. like appearance. You've also got how Joyce Byers, in the, obviously spoilers for the first season if you haven't watched it, then it's been out here, what are you doing? She you know how she puts the lights up in the first season? Yep. Also that's influenced by a reference to Poltergeist, because when she goes to see Poltergeist with her son, then she knows to put the lights up to do the thing.
It's a very close encounters of the third kind as well. I think there's that shot where she opens the door and it's the blinding lights from outside.
It's just so memorable as well. I really enjoyed sort of the characters, the aesthetic, the look, the feel, just pretty much everything about it. Perhaps not so much one of the characters, which is Steve Harrington, but he sort of grew into a character I liked towards the end of it. But overall, it was a genuinely inspired show and really, really well written as well.
Yeah, no, I'll completely agree. And on the opposite end of the spectrum to you, I am a huge proponent of the 80s. The 80s is my favorite decade of all time. Love all the movies and the music and everything from it. So in terms of the references, they probably did go a bit too heavy with them. I love the references, but in terms of, it doesn't feel like it's naturally takes place in the 80s. It's like they're trying to remind you this series takes place in the 80s every single opportunity they get. And I'm completely fine with that. I love picking up on the references. Most of the things as well involved with the plot or even like subtle background things. I liked linking them back to the films that I grew up with and I still watch now. So I loved all of that stuff. And season 2 absolutely does that as well. There's loads of videos you can find out there on YouTube, the list of all the references that they found, and there's probably many more out there as well. So I loved all that stuff. But season 1, it felt, well, it's also heavily inspired by like the works of Stephen King, and the font itself looks like those old horror novels that came out around the same time. when season 1 finished and it had all the cliffhanger set up for season 2, I wasn't sure how to make of it, because I thought Stranger Things is a series that I don't know if it has legs. It felt like you could do it as almost like American Horror Story, where you have the same people coming back maybe, but it's a different story, different characters, something like that. Maybe just do it like an anthology series with the name Stranger Things attached. And I don't know how I feel about it still. I do like series 2, but I definitely do have probably a lot more problems with it than I do with season 1.
Yeah.
And even now, like, I'm reading Wikipedia, and I don't know how accurate Wikipedia is, but they've spoke to the Duffer brothers, and they said that they are going to continue it with a season 3, and they're pursuing a desire to conclude Stranger Things with a 4th or 5th season. So will it have the legs to go that far? We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, no, I loved all the characters, the performances, seeing Winona Ryder back and things like that. I love Winona Ryder, always have. I know some people can be really critical of her performances, but I've loved her in Heathers, in Beetlejuice, Edward Scissorhands, in pretty much everything I've seen her in before, so it was nice seeing her back. And if we go into the trailers that we saw for season 2, I mean, you could definitely tell that this one probably had a lot more budget than the first one.
Oh, definitely. The thriller trailer was
Yes.
fantastically well edited, and it got me really pumped to watch it. However, the season 2 itself is a different kettle of fish, and I don't think quite reaches the height of that trailer. But anyway, that's a topic for the spoiler-free section.
Absolutely, and we've got a lot of stuff to cover in this one, so we'll get into it now. Just reading some of the comments as well. Thank you to everyone in the comments. It seems like the popular things so far, we've got people talking. We've got Brinsley, we've got Video Chemist, and they're all talking about how much they hate episode 7 of season 2. Don't worry, we will get to the hate on season 2 in just a little while. But the plot for this one, for anyone who doesn't know, it picks up a year after the first series ended. Rough synopsis: when terrifying supernatural forces once again begin to affect Hawkins, they realize Will's disappearance was only the beginning, and so the adventure continues. That's a very vague plot. Essentially, Will, this poor kid can't catch a break, can he? Like, he's back in the Upside Down, he's having episodes, he's having visions of all this demonic Cthulhu type shit that's about to attack Hawkins. And it's a new foe that they have to face, which is even bigger and badder than season 1's Demigorgon, which I think we predicted of how that was going to go. That's the logical step for how a sequel usually goes.
Bigger, louder.
Yeah.
Not so much better.
Yes, agreed. So we'll kick off then, before we go into the characters, with our biggest positive and our biggest negative of this new season. Again, keeping it spoiler-free. Tom, what would you say your biggest positive and biggest negative is so far?
Biggest positive. See, I really, really like how they seem to have made it bigger, and I like the fact that they've got a new threat, a new sort of foe, and it's sort of very H.P. Lovecraft in design as well, with it's sort of Cthulhu based, and I really like that aspect of it. I don't necessarily think that's a particular thing, but it's something I really enjoyed about the second season.
Mm-hmm.
What would I say? So if I'm going for worst thing as well,
and you can't say episode 7 because we've already said that. That's a cheat.
that is a cheat. The love triangle.
Yes, I think more specifically a new character that's added, right, with Mad Max.
Yeah.
Sadly, not Mel Gibson. That would have been incredible to get Mel Gibson like this with But yeah, so my biggest positive, I can't just say the 80s because that's just a cop out as well. Jesus, I would say the more psychological tone towards the end of the series, when it all comes to a head. And I will say this is definitely a lot more of a slow burn series than season 1. Season 1 was 8 episodes, and it felt more contained and more concise, and it hit all the story beats. This one took about 4 or 5 episodes to find its footing, in my opinion, and I don't think it needed to be 9 episodes. But when it does get towards the end, it gets really psychological.
Oh, what a statement, Video Chemist.
What have we got in the comments? What's been said?
Max got blacked.
Oh God, I'm going to hell for laughing at that. Wow, Jesus.
Fantastic.
I've lost my train of thought. Yes, when we get to the end of season 2 and we get to like the last 2 episodes, I'm still laughing at that. Jesus. We get to the last 2 episodes. It does get really psychological when you see, Winona Ryder's character and her son and what they're having to go through. I really did like that more darker, somber, urgent tone to it. Definitely felt like there was more at stake than there was in season 1 when it was just kind of one monster hanging around. This one felt a lot more connected, which I liked. My biggest negative, it would be the same as you, the inclusion of some of the new characters and what that does to the dynamic of the group that we'd come to know. One of my biggest negatives with this one, and I was trying to put my finger on this series of what didn't work for it this series when compared to series 1. And I think it's the fact that we don't really get that tight-knit bond of the main group of kids in this one as much.
Yeah.
They're very much more split apart. And don't get me wrong, Dustin is still by far the walk away out of the entire group. He's hilarious. I love all his stuff. He really shines this series. In fact, he's probably the best thing about this series. But that dynamic didn't feel like it was there this season. And they try and skirt towards it towards the end of the series, but by that time it felt like it was a little too late. Also, the character of Mad Max, it does add some unnecessary drama to the mix. Very cliched, very derivative. And I felt like the series could have benefited without that. There's also another new character as well who's kind of irritating and a little bit pointless, but we'll get onto him in a minute. So, again, this is spoiler-free, but it's going to be very difficult to talk about. Let's talk about Will in this series. What did you think of Will?
He's certainly got a lot more to do. But he is, towards the end, sort of relegated to being, I don't know. He seems. I'm not quite sure where to put how to say it, but I enjoy the fact that he's got an awful lot more to do in the new season, and it's more focused around him as well. But that being said, he sort of doesn't have much to do.
Mm-hmm.
He does and he doesn't.
He's always the victim, isn't he? Bless
him.
Like, he's always... I will say, though, the performance was fantastic.
Yeah.
He does have those moments towards the end, and it's almost like he's got this split personality going on with his character. He does feel like a really haunted and troubled kid, and I do like the performance of that. And I do think he had more to do with this one. In Series 1, he was kind of the end goal. It was like he's been taken, he's been kidnapped, we have to find him, and you don't really get much of him. This one, at least, he had a little bit more to do. But my God, this kid's going to have like years of therapy. And I hope when we get to season 3, they don't do something similar to this one. So we talked about the team. Let's talk about Mad Max then. This is a new character that's introduced into the group. She's kind of the 5th member now. And you have the main kid who's very against her joining their party. And I guess he's sharing the sentiment of the audience, because I really didn't like this character. And I wanted to like this character. By the end of the season, I really wanted to see, okay, she had this progression. But there was just something, I don't know if it was her dynamic, I don't know if it was her personality. There was just something that didn't mesh. And she does stir up that love triangle that you talked about as well earlier, which I didn't like.
I think her character's fine, but it does hurt the group dynamic, I think, a little bit. And I think there must have been a way to introduce her and to get her into the group easier. I didn't find her annoying. She was perfectly fine and serviceable, suited the role she was given. In the to sort of add, I think because you have such a tight group dynamic in the first one, adding to it kind of just feels a bit wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something I think the show missed, or it sort of missed the mark in terms of that. It didn't quite have the same tight knit dynamic as the first one did.
Yeah.
And I think the inclusion of Max is because of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I still think the character's fine.
Yeah. Her brother, on the other hand, Billy, who's kind of he's like the sub-antagonist in this series. I didn't realize he's played by the guy who played the Red Ranger in the latest Power Rangers film. He's completely unrecognizable with his mullet and yeah.
He is. He plays to type and is just completely stereotypical. So his character was the most fun I think I've had in the or sort of seen. It was just so cheesy.
He's like the guy I wish I could be. Like, I have my V-neck shirts, but this guy, he's just like, no, I'm going to open this down to the belly button. Like, he is, and we actually have like a really similar taste in music as well. There's a scene in this series where he's listening to Rat, Round and Round, which is one of my favorite songs from the 80s. We'll get onto the music later on in our review, but by God, this guy's got an incredible taste of music. He's just doing like bicep curls to some like 80s hair metal. It's so cheesy.
Oh wow! The Video Chemist is MILF Action Season 3.
We'll get onto that in spoilers because we both like that scene. And you know, some people say they ship what's his name, Jonathan, is it? And
Jonathan and Nancy.
People say they ship that romance. Like, nah, I ship Billy and the mom. Like, I want to see him do her wrong. Season 3. We live in hope. Wow, I'm going to segue away from this one now. One of my favorite pairings in season 2 is 11 and Hopper. And Hopper in this series, he was one of my favorite characters in season 1, and he really comes into his own in this one because it shakes up the dynamic in that he's very much playing the father figure to 11. Now, I'm trying to remember back to season 1 because I didn't rewatch it. That was my bad. But he had a child, didn't he? And she died.
Yes, he did. Sarah, I think, Sarah.
So you can see he's trying to make amends for that and step up more in this role. And he's also having to balance like his investigation work with the police department and also the shady government business who he got roped into at the end of season 1, and also try and protect 11, as well as try and make her feel like a regular child as well. Like, he's essentially kept her under house arrest for the best part of the year. And she's trying to break free. She wants to become more independent. She wants to get back to her old friends. She wants to essentially see the world and break out of these confines. And I really liked that dynamic. That was one of the strongest elements, apart from season 7, which we'll talk about later. But
season 7?
Episode 7. Sorry, we're a few years away from season 7. What did you think, Hopper, then? Because I know he's your favorite character.
He is my favorite character, and I think he's still probably the best character in it by far. I really, really like him. Mm-hmm. Really like him. Just his whole manner, the way he speaks. He doesn't take any shit. He is fantastic to watch, and I do really like his dynamic with 11 as well in this, and that was probably one of the biggest strong points of the season. Was their dynamic and their relationship that sort of grew, and the scene they have together is one of the scenes they have together is quite brutal in terms of how it's acted and how it plays out. But he
played brilliantly with David Harbour and Millie Bobby Brown. They were fantastic.
Definitely. And it's just it's really fun to watch David Harbour play this character. It looks like he's having fun with the role.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of fun with the role, we have a new character added into the mix this season with the character of Bob, played by Sean Astin, everyone's favourite gardener from Lord of the Rings. I was so hyped when they cast Sean Astin. Like, obviously they did it because he was in the Goonies, and there is references to the Goonies in this series as well, mentioned by him himself. I loved him in this series. He was such a likable character. It's like Bob as well from like Batman 1989. Like, you are my number one guy. Like, he absolutely was. Every single scene he was in. When it started off, I didn't know where his loyalties lie, and I didn't know whether I was going to like his character or warm up to him. But Sean Astin's just such a likable guy that it just kind of happened.
He was a great addition as well. I just, everyone sort of thought initially, well, so did I at the beginning. I thought he was kind of the dorky stepdad type character, but he sort of grew into more than that, and sort of developed quite genuine relationships with some of the kids, and even some of the adults as well. But he was always seemed to be the butt of everyone's joke.
Yeah. And I guess that's all we can talk about Bob for right now. We'll get back to him in the spoiler section.
Yeah.
The last character we need to talk about is Steve. Now, never before in a TV, so probably actually Jaime Lannister in Game of Thrones, like around season 3, have I seen such a great redemption arc realized in TV. Steve was my most hated character in series 1. Like, he very much played into that trope. I guess he's sort of been taken by the Billy character for this season. But season 1, Steve was just the school bully. He was the douche. He was an absolute prick. I didn't like him at all. He was very two-dimensional for the most part. Season 2 hits. I think it's fair to say anyone who's watched this new series, he has gone up into like their top favorite characters. I've even seen people saying that he's their favorite character now. I thought he was great in this series. I thought it was a natural continuation of where we left him in series 1. But he is almost like a different character now, and that's a good thing. That's character development. That's what you want from your characters in a series like this. I can't say enough positive things about him. They pair him up with Dustin in one scene. They have like a great bromance that continues through the series, which is probably one of the shining parts of this series. Yeah, and they didn't dwindle too much on the whole love triangle thing with Jonathan and Nancy. I thought that was really going to bog the series down. And don't get me wrong, it is in there, but it's not as love triangle-y as I thought they were going to make it.
Yeah, that seems to have been pushed to the side for another love triangle.
Yes, yeah.
But he's also a good. I was the same. I didn't really think he was particularly that inspired in the first season, but he does really come into his own, and does have a good character arc, and he's becomes a really likable person.
Yeah,
there's a scene between him and Dustin which is really good, which you find out a little bit more about him and that really awesome haircut.
I think, well, I know for a fact that I really want that haircut now. I'll even settle for the mullet at this point. Jury's still out on that one. There are loads more characters in this series, but we could be easily here for another 2 hours talking through all the characters. But we're going to move on now to the special effects and the overall style of this series. As I mentioned in the intro, you can absolutely tell that this series had way more money behind it. The stuff they do with the effects is incredible. The upside down, we even get like a new glimpse into it now with the new monster we get in there, which looks amazing on camera, and the things they can do with that now. There are a few moments, though, especially because this is such a love letter to those 80s films, and I had the same criticisms with season 1. In season 1, when we get to the Demogorgon, I really just wanted it to be a guy in a suit. I wanted to have like slightly more practical effects in that regard. You can do some incredible things with the suit, and the CGI wasn't quite up to point in series 1, I didn't think, with the Demogorgon, and it looked really fake. And there's slight moments like that in series 2, but it's not quite as bad. As I said, you can tell there's more money behind it. They can do better things with the effects. However, some of the close-ups, I do think they could have gone with more practical, maybe. Some things to do with the vines as well, when they're really close up, they could have easily have done that. That's a really like nitpicky thing. It didn't really annoy me. It's just some little bits that I wish if they are homaging those 80s things, I wish they could have just gone with that full like 80s aesthetic in some parts.
Yeah, I agree, but I think some of the effects were. It does have a higher budget behind it, and the effects, I think, for the most part, look incredible. And I kind of see your point about the guy in the suit, but I don't think you could have had the same effect with a CGI monster.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know. There's a new character in this as well, like a new little monster called Dart, for example, and he's completely CGI. I would have liked some like maybe a little bit of practical, because they're going with like the whole Gizmo Mogwai comparison from Gremlins, like it doesn't like bright light, which I liked that reference. I liked that character, and I liked that bond that he had with Dustin's character. I don't know. That was a real little nitpicky thing with mine. So we've got a topic here of references. Now, there are a whole lot of references, so we won't be able to list them all. There's pretty much from every single 80s movie you can think of. Was there one reference in particular that you really liked, without spoiling anything?
One reference I really liked. I'm not too sure, to be perfectly honest. See, I'm going to come back to what I really liked about, to be honest, first watching it, was that the Cthulhu-esque sort of vibe it had, and that was really kind of my favorite thing. But in terms of references, I can't really put my finger on one that I particularly like the most.
I think the one they were marketing the most was definitely the Ghostbusters one.
Yeah.
Even to the point where in one episode's credits we get the full-on Ghostbusters theme song playing.
Yeah. I think that did seem to be, well, that was part of the marketing and part of the posters and everything.
And I did like the setting as well. Setting it at Halloween, I thought, was a really smart move, especially considering it came out Halloween weekend, so you could have that connection to it.
Yeah.
Oh, that was really smart. The music. My God, the music. Okay, so I'm actually having a look at the composers. So composers, it's Kyle Dixon and Michael Stein. Come back with that 80s synth and bass and all that good stuff. I love the soundtrack to Series 1. I love the soundtrack to this one. In terms of the actual songs that are chosen, though, like the mainstream songs that are picked, and I'm going to have to go back to Series 1 and watch it to see if that's the case with that one as well, but it felt very jukeboxy in this one.
Yeah,
I agree. Like they'd play a song and you'd get like a 20-second to 30-second burst, and then it'd cut, and then you'd get another one. And me, I was like, oh, I love that song, and that's the reaction that the showrunners want you to have. But it felt very sort of, this was a popular song from the 80s, let's play this one. And let's just keep churning them out. And there wasn't really many scenes where the song would linger. I think the only example of that is probably in the very last scene, which I'm not going to give away, but there's this big social event where they do play 2 80s tracks back to back. 2
really good 80s tracks.
Yes, and that felt like it enhanced the mood that you were watching, and it had an impact. The other ones felt very music video-like. For example, there's a use of Bon Jovi's song Runaway in episode 7 of this series. And it's an obvious choice for a song to pick, but it felt very music video and just doing to hit those beats to get that reaction out, and it didn't feel as natural. And I don't know if season 1 did have that. I know it had some moments, but for example, in season 1 you had that great moment of Peter Gabriel's Heroes. I think it was in episode 3, which is still without a doubt the best scene out of the 2 series of Stranger Things in my opinion. But the music did seem a bit on the nose in this one. Like they were trying to, we've got all the rights to these songs, let's just get them in there, even if it's just 10 or 20 seconds.
Yeah, no, I can agree. I can agree with that. Some of them did feel a bit shoehorned, but for the most part, it was just good listening to them.
Yeah, I mean, we love 80s music anyway, don't we? So
yeah,
it was all good. We'll go into spoilers then in a minute. So overall recommendation on Stranger Things season 2?
It's good. I don't think it's quite as good, but it's because it tries to do everything bigger. It doesn't really capture. There's something missing from it, and it doesn't really capture. It has, I can't really put my finger on what it is that makes it kind of disappointing. I still really enjoyed it, just not as much. There's something missing from it that I can't quite put my finger on. Now, I know you mentioned that you think you know the reason why, so I'm curious to hear what that is.
Well, I mentioned it was more the dynamic of the group.
Yeah,
the main kids, and also I know you've got to move the characters on. Like 11 is pretty much on her own most of this series, but that was one of the nicest things in series 1, where you had the group of kids and 11 into the mix, and that main bond between the kids. It'd be like if they did a sequel to the Goonies and you just split them all apart for most of the film.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be there. The magic of Stranger Things, other than the novelty of the setting, was that dynamic, and I don't think it was there with this. None of them turn in bad performances. They're still all great. They're still on fine form, but because you don't have them there all together to bounce off each other for the most part, like some are paired up, which you get a little bit of. But then again, on the flip side, I understand that a series has got to evolve. I know that you've got to take the characters in different directions, and you can't keep it to the sameness from season to season. So there was that for me. I don't think it's a case that the novelties wore off at all, because I still really like this setting. I like this decade and the style of it overall. So that's absolutely still there. Another problem for me that I had with this one is that the narrative just felt very... I don't know if it was too weak a story to stretch over this amount of time, but it felt like you could have done this one in about 7 episodes. I think 8 would have been a push, in all honesty.
Yeah.
The first 4 did feel like a slog. And I think because you saw this series before me and you sent me a message saying that it's a slow starter, it takes a while to get into it.
Yeah.
And I think Tate said that as well. And I really wish I could have got some notes from Tate on this one to see what he thought. But he also said that he enjoyed it, wasn't as good as Series 1. But I think that really slow pace at the beginning does hurt it. And I think it's also trying to balance too many plot points as well, which most of them don't really come to fruition, or if they do, they're not fully realized, and they felt very thrown in, like it was too many things happening.
Yeah, no, I agree.
But I still really enjoyed it, and it's still great TV, and I would recommend anyone watching it. It's still a decent series. It doesn't quite live up to the writing or conciseness or how tight Series 1 was, but it's still really good, and it's still good TV. So that'll do it for our spoiler-free section of Stranger Things Series 2. So if you haven't seen the series yet, if you haven't quite finished it, and you don't want anything spoiled, please tune out now, finish the series, and then come back to us, because we are going to be going into it more in depth now and picking out certain bits that we had problems with or certain bits that we liked. So you have been warned. What do you want to start off with first? Do you want to talk about episode 7, or do you want to talk about that whole conspiracy theorist character?
Okay, let's start with the conspiracy theorist character, because I want to save the best till last.
Okay.
His addition. So they introduce at the beginning of the very first episode this sort of conspiracy theory nut that the it's what's her name? The character that died in Barb.
Mm-hmm.
Barb's family hired this sort of private investigator conspiracy nut to sort of look into the death of their daughter, or if their daughter's gone missing, or can she be found. Obviously we know she's dead as a doorknob, but sort of it's a plot point that's brought up and then kind of gets put aside for a few episodes until you get Nancy and Jonathan sort of going on the case,
mm-hmm.
as it were.
Oh no, I think Tom's entered the upside down. There we go, he's back.
There we go. So it was his addition sort of added a sort of new level of drama to two characters, especially Steve and Nancy, because both of them were sort of dealing with their role in sort of Barbara's death. But he seems to bring out a conspiracy. They have a whole scene where Jonathan and Nancy they're sort of drinking vodka or whatever, and they explain all the truth to him, and he just says we've got to, kind of summarizing for brevity, but he says we've got to water it down. So they come up with a story that's not as far-fetched, mm-hmm. that people will still believe, that gets the place shut down, and that kind of goes out the window a little bit when all the monsters show up. So that plot happens where they go to the conspiracy nut, and then afterwards they kind of all meet up, and then the monster stuff happens, and then it's brought back at the very end.
It's like in the ending epilogue, isn't it? Yeah. Like in a quick montage.
Yeah. And it just sort of, I think a little bit more. I mean, I know you had to like have all the monsters attack and stuff like that, but it just felt like it could have done a bit more.
it felt like it was just a way to get Jonathan and Nancy doing something this series, because when you've got all the monster attack and you've got Hopper doing what he does, 11 and the kids, and you've got that huge monster attack in the facility, where does that leave Jonathan and Nancy? Jonathan essentially just kind of stands at his mother's side during the last 2 episodes of this series. Nancy is just left there to do pretty much nothing. So I think that plot was just thrown in to give them something to do. But even when it's thrown in, it kind of peters out midway through the series anyway. Then you have episode 7, which kind of really disrupts the flow and the structure of the series, in my opinion. And then you cycle back to the ending and you're focused on Will's plight and that whole finale there, and you don't really care about that side story. Maybe they should have saved the whole story of uncovering the truth about the company until series 3, where they could develop it more and it could be more at the forefront. But even just a few scenes in there just show that he's like working on the case. I tell you who that character reminded me of, though, the conspiracy theorist guy. It reminded me of John Turturro's character from the Transformers films.
Oh, God.
Not quite as bad, but that kind of really quirky, weird sense of humor.
Yeah.
I could imagine, like, if Michael Bay got his talons into this, like, he'd really play that whole bit up.
He was.
Go on, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to finish by saying he was a fine addition, but I think they could have done a little bit more or a little bit less with him to sort of make the series flow a little bit better.
Yeah, and it was just really the catalyst of that whole with Jonathan and Nancy. Will they? Won't they? And that whole series, that whole event, how that played out, it really reminded me of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, where you've got Indiana Jones in one room and Willie Scott in the other, and they're both pining after each other, but they're too proud to go to the other person's room and make it happen. It really kind of reminded me of that a little bit. We've delayed it long enough. Let's talk about episode 7 then. So, I think it's fair to say that this is, without a doubt, the worst episode of all the Stranger Things. The Lost Sister. There's some elements of, I thought, like the Lost Boys in there, or Near Dark, especially with a whole group of kids. I
just have no idea what they were thinking, because it is a waste of everybody's time. It is stuff we do not care about at all, and I just don't know why it's included. It just, to have it after episode 6, where you get the attack, or the start of the attack, and then it just cut, and then it just this episode just comes out of nowhere, and it's jarring, and it disrupts the flow, and kind of ruins a reveal at the end. I think. No,
I agree. So the first scene of series 2 actually is this new character that we're introduced, number 8, and we hadn't seen her for ages, and I thought they've got to come back to this at some point. And they do. It follows the whole event where 11 goes and seeks out her biological mom. And I thought they'd play up that more, because she kind of goes there, gets some information, and then just leaves and then never comes back to her. And I thought that was a little bit strange. But that whole episode 7, it felt... the writing really took a dive. I didn't like how it broke the flow of the series. And also, I saw a review earlier from Chris Stuckman, who said that it felt like an episode that was a pilot for a possible spin-off they might do in the future with this other group of kids and like other kids that have got powers. I really didn't like it.
So Sheila's commented that it was included so that Elle would learn how to control and manifest her power, and that's it. That's all that episode was.
But they could have done that in any other situation in the series. They didn't need to introduce all these other characters to do that, I don't think.
Yeah.
It just felt very cheap. It didn't feel... I really can't put my finger... It just felt really weak.
It was just an awful episode.
Yeah, it felt like a filler episode. If you took out this episode, maybe add a plot point in them where 11 realizes what she's doing is wrong, and she goes back to the group, you could easily do that and still keep it like the 8-episode structure. It didn't need, that extra episode thrown into the mix. Hated it. Enough said about that one.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Sean Astin then, Bob.
R.I.P. Bob.
R.I.P. Bob. He really did not deserve this end. When it jumped on him, I was like, no, he's going to be fine. He's Sean Astin. He's gonna shrug it off. And they're kind of biting him a little bit, and I was like, oh, he's going to be like all gnarled up, but he's going to be fine. And then it cuts to that shot where like he's got 4 on top of him, and they're just like ripping his throat out. And I was just like, he's not coming back from this, is he? This is it. This is all
See, he gets the heroic moment and then just dies.
Because they do have a big build-up, don't they? In the corridor, it's like the first Matrix film where he's on the phone and someone's like instructing him where to go and sneak around, and you think he's going to make it out, and then he doesn't.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about that, because I really liked him, and I liked his relationship with, was it Joyce? Is that her name?
Joyce Byers. But I think it needed that.
You think he needed to die, though?
Yeah, I think he did. I think so. Because, you know, if no one gets hurt, then the threat isn't real.
That's true. But did it need to be Bob? Could we have had someone else?
Well, you can't have one of the main characters, because they're what make the show.
You could have had good. Scientist guy. What was his name? Paul Reiser.
He's a cool scientist guy. It had to be Bob.
It felt like an unnaturally horrible end for the character, though.
Yeah, but you know, it's sort of the juxtaposition of you want to things like that. You have the heroes. The hero comes out on top. No, he doesn't. Not at all.
I just wanted that moment where he like takes down one of the demi-dogs and just goes, "And that's for my old gaffer."
Yeah.
Alas, we will have no Bob in series 3. Rest in peace, Bob, indeed. Let's get to the final scene then, I guess, because it's a weird one to talk about. It feels like we're missing out a lot, but when I'm going back over it in my head, I think we've pretty much hit on all the main points. It's really strange. The snowball dance. Probably, I mentioned that in season 1, the whole Paul, oh God, what's his name? Peter Gabriel song. I was going to say Paul Gilbert then for a second. The Peter Gabriel song from series 1 is my favorite moment in Stranger Things. This is a very close second. This was a very emotional end to the series. All the characters get paired up apart from poor Dustin. It's a very heartbreaking moment. I was there. I was welling up with him in that moment. And then Nancy comes over and dances with him. You've got Love is a Battlefield that plays. I believe there's a Olivia Newton-John song that plays. I couldn't place that one. But the main two are Time After Time, Cyndi Lauper, and Every Breath You Take by the Police. And by God, did they hit home with those two songs. Great. Elle and, oh God, what's his name? Mike, is it?
Yeah. Elle and Mike get together. And Max and...
I'll let you say it.
I'm not going to say it. Token guy.
Yes. Wow. We're the worst kind of people, aren't we? I think it's Lucas.
Lucas, that was it.
He didn't want to be Winston out of the Ghostbusters.
No. Just because he was black.
Yeah, no, but I did like that. I know she's there for a love triangle, but I just really like the character of Dustin.
Yeah.
So that moment where he can kind of let go, and you know that Dustin's going to grow up to be the kind of guy who's going to be like a billionaire playboy, and have like his own Playboy mansion and things like that. He is going to grow up to be that kind of guy, or like a rock star or something.
Yeah,
I just really like how it was framed. It was gorgeous. The music, the emotion, everything was there, and we do get our very on the nose cliffhanger for season 3. The Mind Flayer is still there. It's still active, and I'm guessing that's still going to continue to be the main antagonist. Didn't quite leave on as much of a big cliffhanger as series 1, because series 1, it left all the plot lines up in the air. You had Will that was coughing up slugs and was still being haunted by the Upside Down. You had Hopper, who was being taken into that car by the shady government. So there was a lot of plot threads that you could see going into the next one. This one, everyone seems at an equilibrium at the end of this.
Yes, they
series.
do, yeah.
Everyone's at a happy place, apart from maybe Steve. Like, he has that moment where he looks at Nancy, but even with that, you can kind of see that he's moved on and he's ready to move on with that. It's really just this big threat that's still lurking there in the Upside Down, that's not too far away, that's just waiting for its moment. I thought it was a great ending. It's one of my favorites. It's my favorite scene of series 2. I thought it was a really nice way to end it. And of course, it's harkening back to those films like Pretty in Pink and Some Kind of Wonderful, and those those romance teen films from the 80s.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Which I really like, and I like that they included that. I think we've pretty much said everything we can on this one, right? Yes. Stranger Things Series 2. Final thoughts on Stranger Things Series 2, then?
It's good. I mean, it's not as good as the first, and there are some things you'll have to get over to enjoy it. New characters and the like, and sort of a group dynamic that isn't quite there. But I rather enjoyed it for what it was. The first season is miles better, but it is thoroughly enjoyable and does have some really humorous and quite heartbreaking moments as well.
Yeah, I agree. I was just looking at the comments there. So we got Sheila saying, could have, but we wouldn't have had Hopper saying bitchin'. Would I say that series 2 is bitchin'? Probably not. I still really enjoyed it. It doesn't come anywhere close to series 1, and I do have a lot more problems with this series than I do series 1. But I still care about these characters. You've got some great performances across the board, and I think it was just the running time and how many episodes were in this series that did let it down. My voice is completely gone at this point.
Yeah, something else I want to add, it needed a little bit more focus.
Yeah, no, I agree. There was slightly too many plot points. But we say that, and we still say that it felt very simplistic. So I don't know. I think that a lot of time was wasted. Like episode 7 was completely wasted.
Yeah.
There was a lot of other moments they could have dialed back on. There was a lot of repetition I found with the first 4 episodes where you had Will seeing something and having to like scribble it down or whatever, and then that would repeat for like the next 4 episodes. You didn't need that kind of amount of time. But I guess without that build-up, you wouldn't have had that great finale with the last 2 episodes, which I do think were really great and did justify having that slow build, maybe. So I'm still really conflicted on it. I did enjoy it, but I know that I don't enjoy it as much as Series 1, and it felt like they'd lost a few of the magic moments and dynamic that made Series 1 so great in the first place. But that'll do it for our review on Stranger Things Series 2. Be sure to comment, subscribe, let us know what you thought of this series. How would you compare it to Series 1? Which was your favourite episode? Any references that you really enjoyed or characters? Or maybe it's something we forgot to mention in this review entirely. Anything Stranger Things related, please do let us know. We are going to be having a short break now, but we'll be going live again tonight for a review on Murder on the Orient Express. I'm really excited to talk about that one. There'll be more reaction videos from me as and when they come out, and there'll be a lot more movie reviews as well as we move on for the upcoming weeks. Wow, I can't get my words out now. We've got a very special Justice League review coming out in 2 weeks' time as well. So hit the subscribe button, comment, share, spread the word, all that good stuff. And until the next video, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.